Hello, second video today. This is something I've wanted to talk about as well. I'm going to basically reflect on Jason's recent video called Can You Imagine? And he gives a very good summary of basically 50 odd videos about the chronology of this reality. And he mentions in this about Adam, as quoted in Genesis 5:5, about Adam died after 930 years. And that refers to a period before Genesis. Interestingly, you'll notice the 5:5 implies, well, 5 and 5 is 10, or 1 and 0 are sort of inverse to the binary of 0 and 1, because it's come from the metaphysical into the physical. This is what I'm sharing here, really is just feelings and thoughts and following hunches from what I'm hearing. So this 930 years, well, that equates to 3 periods of 310. Which got me thinking, when you have like seasons, it's in 4, so the next number in that sequence would be 1240. I don't know if anybody has a better knowledge of numerology, but 1240, it just seems to sort of ring a bell for some reason. But anyway, the 930. Now, if you take the 9 and flip it over to a 6, you've got a flip on the vertical. Now, you've also got a flip between 360 from 930. So the 3 exchanges places with the 9 or the 6. So you've got a linear flip over as well of those two numbers. Just little things to think about here. So it's implying like a double cross in this reality, in this physical realm, as compared to the metaphysical realm. But I was also thinking, this 310, what if the Earth had a year of 310 days before it had a year of 360 days, which then changed to 365 and a quarter. And it then is said to, in the shortening of days, go down to 240. So I wonder from this if a pattern could be worked out, if the pole star prior to Draconis could be identified. So you've got whatever that pole star is, then to Draconis, then to Polaris, and then it may indicate what the next one in the sequence is. I've got no dispute at all with what Jason's saying and the picture that he's painting about the year 2040. But it sort of neatly ties into what I was saying on the last video, where I looked at the symbology of the anchor. And I feel it is very important that we anchor ourselves. If you're coming, say, from a truth-seeking side, like Flat Earth or mud floods, Sataria, or any of these external subjects that have the umbrella term of conspiracy theories, it's all very fascinating. And this pattern that Jason is showing through the Archaix channel is also being confirmed. It's self-proving. Look at Square Peg Divergent's latest video. She predicted about an earthquake. Well, she's now gives a link on her latest community status that shows there has been an earthquake. But in this process, and I feel it is a huge advantage forearmed is forewarned. So when you see the exoteric and the external outplay and these predicted dates playing out, which seems to be following a script. The controllers of this realm and the way things are done very much seem to indicate that this is very much the case. I have no problem with the idea that the whole idea of Adam and the 930 years has been sort of shunted up in chronology. An example of that is how many channels will talk about this missing 1,000 years and how things are shifted about. You can see that in the history that is presented. But to get through this, and as I've said on the last few videos and in this Go Within series, it's about internalizing these things. You have a macro and a micro. From a personal perspective, I have looked at significant events in my own, or the life of this avatar, and it does follow patterns of 7. Sometimes it could be nearer 6 or nearer 8 years, but without knowing the specific dates, it's difficult to actually calculate, so it's rounded up to the year, and I have a series of events that come out in 7s. So I would say to you that take that blueprint that Jason is showing with the isometric markers. If you can find the isometric marker, or if you find a significant event in your life, and then look back in your life story, and find a similar event and see if that follows like a 7-year pattern. And you may find these 7s overlap anyway. Also, what leads on from this, and I left a comment in response to Jason's video called Can You Imagine, that if we could establish the blueprints of history and isolate the original templates, it may also indicate where the tampering with the templates has come in. This may also help to, if we can establish that template, you may be also to apply the micro version and determine a template for your physical avatar. Because there seems to be, from various conversations I've had, that no matter how much of a desire and a wish you put out to do something, that there seems to be like an invisible force. So, for example, I can readily think of discussions I've had with various people over the years who've told me about how they've tried to move, and a series of things have gone wrong, like the removal van hasn't turned up, or something has or even breaking a foot, breaking your bones in your foot, so you're in a cast and that prevents you from moving. It is as if there is something that tries to keep you in a specific geographical location, which seems to imply that there is a predetermined pattern for these avatars, but within that you still have a certain amount of free will. But I would internalize everything. It is very easy, if you've come from the truth-seeking side, to carry on looking at the external, but you have to also ask yourself, out of that external, how is that making you feel inside? And say, for example, take the mud flood idea. How does that actually affect your life, apart from you have a new perspective on it? Certainly you can't change anything about it. And I agree, the whole idea of windows below ground level does seem rather ridiculous and would make the building particularly vulnerable to flash floods, for example. I still maintain that the true ground height will be where the railway lines actually are. They are sort of engineered to be as level as possible, and I feel that where you've had this vibrational transforming sort of mud into liquid, and therefore it moves easier, and then it's had to be cleared, hence you have all these cuttings and things. You've only got to look at, I'm just going to sidestep here, but you've only got to look at the whole sort of historical image of these Irish navvies who are sort of renowned for drinking and just brawling and getting drunk when they weren't working. It's hardly paints a picture of people who are being academic with any sort of engineering skills to actually build these things, more to sort of unearth something that was already there. Also, you have that saying, see how the land lies. Consider how, when you hear that sentence now with a fresh perspective, see how the land lies. Is the land being honest to your eyes? Are there things being revealed to you in that? Anyway, back on topic, because I'm all very much about the internal journey, because I feel if everything comes from within, then we have to go within. I was having a very interesting conversation with Nigel from Devil's Playground 2 channel, and Kim, first time I've met her. And we're talking about the atomic bomb, how it resembles a brain, and if you consider what is inside you, your true essence, that is the potential. Now, if you allow anger, for example, that emotion to take control, if you're triggered, how that explodes out, but like a nuclear explosion, that mushroom cloud is the loss of energy. So consider about where you put your focus. And this is why I feel it is so important to do that inner work, because you do not want these emotions to take control of you, so you have a mutiny on the vessel. It's where you need to drop anchor and weigh things up, and then you weigh an anchor, and then your vessel can continue on its journey. So yes, internalize everything. I pretty much agree with what Jason is showing, if for no other reason that by having a sort of working chronology that is self-proving, that it takes the element of doubt. You now have a logical sequence, a tool on which to use. But this leads me on to another part of this. Consider when you buy a car, well, more likely if it's a brand new car, you will get a handbook. That will give you very basic sort of maintenance instructions and illustrations. That, shall we say, is like the equivalent of the historic template. But when you get into the garage, into the engineering side of that car, you now have this manual that goes far deeper. And I feel what you have got in the Bible, for example, you have a historic playout of events, of templates and blueprints and patterns. But then it's consider where has that all started? And I feel this is where the esoteric meaning, pretty much the way Neville Goddard shows it, that all these characters are states of mind. They are all parts that we play in this reality. In that esoteric meaning, the way Neville Goddard explains it, then puts that totally where there is no conflict within that story, within those 66 books. You don't need the apocryphal books, the canon that was removed from the Bible, or any of the extra canonical books. You can work just with those 66 and get this message. And that message is that you, your true essence, the real you, the I am that is inside you, has fallen, as it were, into a physical vessel to have an experience, to then overcome all these obstacles, to navigate your way through this current sea, this reality, without being rocked by the stormy seas and the emotional waves. So that ship, your vessel, can then navigate its way through to do its journey, to then come back, just like as shown with the magnets, how that energy will come back into itself again. Because what you send out comes back. This pattern repeats with everything. So, for example, the seed that falls into earth, into darkness, then has the potential, if the soil is right, to become a tree, which over a period of time will then decay and return back into the earth. It follows that same cycle. You have these cyclical cycles with everything. And as Jason has shown, even what we thought was linear time follows cyclical patterns and a series of repeats. Now, you have repeats in the material realm. You've only got to look at television, for example, and look how many programs are repeats. You can go to a pharmacy and you can get a repeat prescription. It's prescribed. And it seems very much that the script is what is shown in scriptures. So internalize all these things. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't listen to any channel, but I would certainly suggest that you do listen to what Jason is showing you. But to then also internally reflect on the esoteric meaning that you can get from all of this as well. Because if you don't get the core within you sorted out first, it comes back to that you put the oxygen mask on yourself first so you can be of service to others. If you haven't got it right within yourself, then consider the energy that you are putting out. We are basically just like magnets after all. So you start from this heart center and it radiates out. Now it can be altered in frequency by the central processing unit, which is the brain, when it is running in the system programming. Hence, things are expressed as anger or in very negative ways, but you can transmute that. You can do the language lessons of the heart. You can go into role play. You can get yourself a pillow and you can beat the crap out of it. You can shout and scream at it. In doing that, now if you go outside into an open space and do it, of course, you're overcoming that fear of what others may think from seeing you do this, and you can give the plausible explanation that you are rehearsing for a play that you are writing, which is actually not an untruth, because you are writing your story, and that is part of the process of writing your story, is facing the ghosts of your past that you keep alive in your mind, that school bully, that abusive family member, whatever has happened in your life, the things that come up that still trigger you, that still need to be addressed. Likewise, if you are presented with new information and you feel triggered, before you do that, consider why you're feeling triggered. That's the time to drop anchor and weigh things up. Because if you're feeling triggered and anger by somebody else's words, one, it shows the power that words have. Two, are you 100% certain that the information you have at that particular moment is correct? Do you know it in your heart to be 100% true? So this is why we need to remain constantly open-minded to new ideas, because we are all potential. But we don't want to explode out like a nuclear bomb. Rather, we want to transmute it and put out a beautiful display, and in doing so, we're not adding to the destruction in the external. We're actually co-creating something far more beautiful and on a very different frequency from that of fear and doubt. Those two doors are the doors you really want to close. It is expressed as a spiritual war. So think of it in terms of, are you going to send your infantry into battle without the protection of the artillery? Because if you have left the door open for doubt and fear, it will consume you. And if I go with the external picture as Jason is presenting for 2040, it's going to look very daunting, and the doubt and fear will consume you, and you probably won't survive it, because that doubt and fear will become such a strong force. Now, if you don't believe me on that, try climbing up a mast of, say, 400 foot and see how high you get. I suspect there are very few who have no fear of heights and have the trust that they can hold on to the rung. But invariably, a lot of people will get to a certain point and will be frozen in fear, and their body will not be able to respond. Obviously, with that analogy, you would put yourself through that voluntarily, but when it is something external, like, say, this Phoenix event, this reset, as it were, how much control do you have over that? How much control do you have over yourself to face that? Because that is another consistent theme with the internal work about facing yourself, facing your shadow side, facing the unpleasant aspects of yourself, which none of us like to do. But it is a necessary step. It's like when you take a step into ice cold water, initially it is going to feel horrible and you'll want to recoil back from it and come back into a comfort zone. But we are free-flowing, we are moving in this current sea. So we need to navigate our way through this experience. So it is important to navigate yourself through the most calm and tranquil mill pond situations that you can, or to create those mill pond situations by not adding to the storm of the external reality. So I thought I'd just share those thoughts and a sort of reflection on what Jason is saying. If you haven't seen the video, it's a good summary of, you haven't got to watch all 50 videos on the Anuna files, for example. It's sort of incorporated in that, so it's a dovetailed one. And of course you've got Simplicity Revealed channel with Archaix summary videos if you want to look a bit further. But it is something worth exploring, and then also to internalize that and look for those isometric markers within your own life story, and look for those past events, because if the future can be predicted from mirror events in the past, then what applies to the macro also applies to the micro. So it is all about reflecting within oneself on all of these things. So I feel it's a very worthwhile step to internalize everything and weigh things up inside yourself. My experience is it has brought a new feeling of calm, a new order within this physical embodiment called a human vessel. And a vessel, of course, is another name for a ship, and ships have anchors. And of course, long after the rest of the ship has decayed, the bit that lasts the longest is often the anchor. You'll see them displayed in various places all over the world, normally with a little plaque and to say what ship it's come from. But it's a perfect sort of analogy to like the human skeleton, the remains. The ship, the anchor is the remains of the ship, like the skeleton is the mortal remains. Right, so we're up to 25 minutes. There was something else, but it's gone, so we'll hold that over for another video. But just reflect upon these cells, weigh things up internally. Look back in your own past, which will help you with the future. Also, it's now come back. So if you look at the historic narrative, I think you'll see that the story told is one where the sort of controllers of this realm were very much attacking the physical aspects, whereas today it's more through the technology. It is an attack on the mental. So you have P for physical and M for mind or mental. So you've got PM. Now, think of EMP storm that is often mentioned on videos and things. So from PM, we need to do an isometric marker with an E and turn it to EMP. And I think you'll see that this pattern is happening. So if you change your polarity within yourself, therefore you change your E energy. You're going through this mental navigation through what this reality is presenting, and as events unfold, I'm of the idea that the so-called dormant DNA will be reenacted, so it then becomes physical. So there's your PMEMP. So you have a sort of alphabetic isometric marker with a mirror, and one is the inverse of the other. So I think we'll end on there, and hopefully that's given you another perspective, another way to look at things. But the most important thing is you do you. You sort out, because nobody else can do it for you. You sort out your internal core and come back into center, come back into balance, which is always the heart. That's where we should all come from with everything we do, rather than explode out from that potential. You can create something wonderful into this world and freely share it with others that are on the same frequency. So have a beautiful day, and love to you all.